Grace to you and peace from our Lord Jesus Christ. As Paul would say, I thank God always when I remember you. Good morning and welcome to worship. Please center yourself on this beautiful day that God has made, that we may invite him into our presence as we join together in worship. Isaiah, surprised by the Holy One in the temple, a vision, a call, a response. Paul, here I am, send me, surprised by the Spirit at his hateful work, an interruption, a challenge, a response. I received from the Lord the word of grace I now proclaim. Weary fishermen, surprised by Jesus at their empty boats, a sign, a promise, a response. They left everything to follow. Let us pray. Wanderer of the seashores and sidewalks, inviting us to sail out on our smug and snug harbor boats into the uncharted waters of faith, to wander off from our predictable paths, to follow you into the unpredictable footsteps of the kingdom, to leave the comfort of our homes and accompany you into the uncomfortable neighborhoods we usually avoid. As we wait in our simple, sometimes crazy, constantly uncertain lives, speak to us, Spirit of grace, of that hope which is our anchor, of that peace which is our rock, of that grace which is our refuge. Let us continue to worship God with our hymn this morning, and we are celebrating, as you know, Black History during the month of February by including African American music in our services. Again this year, we will be enjoying selections from the Caribbean Praise Initiative of the United Methodist Church's General Board and Global Ministries. The hymns on the CDs that we hear and the music that we will hear are compositions performed by singers from the Providence Methodist Church, Jamaica, and the United Theological College of the West Indies, Kingston, Jamaica. The syncopated rhythms and unique harmonies in these hymns come to us from several different Caribbean islands. As Reverend Dr. George Mulrain, pastor Provident Methodist United and adjunct professor of the United Theological College of the West Indies, commented in a recent presentation on the Caribbean hymnology, by singing hymns from different cultures reminds us that we are children of God in one world, celebrating the oneness we have as God's people in this global village. We sincerely appreciate permission to use the hymns from the CD Caribbean Praise. Caribbean Praise selections are used with permission from Dr. Mulrain, and we will enjoy this one as we continue in our worship.
Church on earth is seeking your renewal from above. Teach us all the art of speaking with the accent of your love. We will heed your great commission, call you into every place. Preach, baptize, fulfill my mission, serve with love and share my grace. Give to those in bondage, lift the burdens caused by sin. Give new hope, new strength and courage, grant release from fears within. Light for darkness, joy for sorrow, love for hatred, peace must shine. These and countless blessings follow as the Spirit gives new life. the slums of every city where the bruised and lonely dwell.
We shall show the Savior's pity, we shall of His mercy tell.
In all lands and with all races we shall serve and seek to bring all the world to render praises Christ to thee, Redeemer King.
Our Old Testament reading this morning is taken from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 1 to 13. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and the thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphs flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here am I. Send me. He said, Go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding, be ever seeing, but never perceiving. Make the heart of this people calloused, make their ears dull, and close their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, For how long, Lord? And he answered, Until the cities lie ruined and without inhabitant, until the houses are left deserted and the fields ruined and ravaged, until the Lord has sent everyone far away and the land is utterly forsaken. And though 1/10 remains in the land, it will again be laid waste. But at the terebinth and oak leave stumps, when they are cut down, so the holy seed will be the stump in the land. Our New Testament reading is from the book of Corinthians, chapter 15, verses 1 to 11. Now, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received and on which you have taken your stand. By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you. Otherwise you have believed in vain. For what I received I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the 3rd day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas and then to the 12. After that he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are still living, although some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me also, as to one abnormally born. For I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. Whether then it is I or they, this is what we preach, and this is what you believed. Our New Testament reading is taken from the book of Luke, chapter 5, verses 1 to 11. One day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. This is the word of God. Praise be to God.
Let us pray. Bless the words of my mouth and the meditation in our hearts, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. We heard today the Gospel of Luke and the familiar story of fishing and fishermen, and I say fishermen because I'm relatively sure women didn't do a whole lot of fishing back then. But nonetheless, the fisherman's story is how Jesus called his disciples. And I have to say, when I think about fishing, I think about 2 things. One is when I grew up near the Poconos in Pennsylvania, my dad took me out in a dark green painted wooden boat to teach me to fish. And my grandfather came along. My grandfather believed that little children should be very quiet in the boat, and without a moment's cause, I sat there very carefully, making sure that I only whispered while we made our way to the middle of the lake. All of a sudden, from the back of the boat where my grandfather was sitting, you heard this very loud noise, almost loud enough that you couldn't hear yourself think. And I looked at my grandfather and he said, "This is supposed to attract fish." Well, we had a good laugh because it was louder than anything we could have said, but no fish were caught that day. My first fish was a sunfish, and I felt so bad for it, it went right back into the lake. Fast forward to when I got married, and my husband, an avid fisherman and hunter, decided to take me into a fishing derby on Lake Erie where we lived, and said that I would enjoy fishing if I caught fish. Well, for hours we sat out there, and for the life of me could not figure out why fishing was so much fun. And finally, I saw a fish jump way out and figured it was on my husband's lure, but it was on mine. And my heart started to pound, hoping that we would win the big $300 prize, which we could have used in those days quite assuredly, and decided that my husband should probably bring it in because I was going to lose it, but he insisted that I did. And I did, and I was so proud, and we raced back to have it weighed, only to find out it came into second place, and instead of $300, I got a red Coleman cooler, which we still use to this day, and I swear my husband must be very upset at hearing every time the cooler comes out that I won it in the fishing derby. Now, I don't fish very much anymore, and now that we have the cottage, my husband goes out with his friends and fishes, and sometimes there are fish, and sometimes there are not. But there's always the stories of what is the best lure, or if there should be worms to be used, if they're going to go out for walleye or bass or pickerel or perch or whatever it may be, and in something would come. Well, always my husband would come up the steps, he'd have a fish perhaps, and he'd say, well, the big one got away, or this will be good enough for dinner, or something like that. But when my son-in-law, who had never fished, came up with his very first fish, ran up the steps so we could take his picture, he wasn't quite sure how to hold it because he's a football player. And so this fish was being held pretty much like a football until my daughter grabbed it out of her husband's hands and said, "Silly, this is how you hold a fish." And she put her hands up at the gills and the picture was taken. And I got to thinking that those fish never looked pretty. They always had those eyes staring at you. You never knew what color they were, how old they were, if they had seaweed on them. And most of the time, my husband catches and releases. But they never come looking very pretty on a platter, filleted with parsley and maybe a slice of lemon, so that when you take the picture, it looks really, really nice. It's never on ice. It's never on a case in the Zayre's seafood section. It's just a fish, and you never know what you're going to catch, and you just take the picture. And some days, the fishing is better than others. I learned quite quickly that you don't fish when there's a north wind, my husband would say, as though everybody in the world should have known that fact. I also learned that red sky in the morning means that there's some kind of a warning. Red sky at night is a sailor's delight. I didn't know that was a fact as well. Or that the lake boats are very different than the boats that are the ocean boats that would go through the canal down in Port Colborne. All these fishing and marina things were second nature to my husband because he grew up having jobs on the marina and drove a boat at a very young age. And my very last and final story is about the time when we launched our boat to bring back to our house. And he said, "Why don't you drive it back?" But my husband failed to tell me that when the bigger boats came by and made a wake, that I should speed up the boat rather than slow it down. And I was sure by the time that I had gotten home that my husband was ready to kill me off. I left the boat, went into the house, and decided that we needed a little space for a couple of minutes. But fishing in Jesus' day was different. Fishing was a common thing. It's what a lot of people did for a living. And the nets were always very strong because they were hand-tied and knotted and used over and over and over again. And so it was that Jesus went to a place and told his stories to the crowds in things that were familiar to them. So what might be fishing today might be something different for us if he were to tell us the story. If he were telling us the story of the woman who was searching for the lost coin, he might tell us the story of the lost keys or the lost cell phone, and we would understand how diligently she was trying to find it. And so it is with fishing and the church. And Jesus says it's really not about fish. But here comes Simon and his friends out all night, imagine, and there you get to the end of the day. You have nothing to show for it. You aren't going to make any money. You smell like fish. You're tired. And all you want to do is put your nets in the boat and go home. And someone says to you, "Go out and put out your nets." And you can say, "But I did it all night and I didn't catch any fish." And he said, "Go and do it." And of course we know there were so many fish they could hardly fill the net. And what that really meant was there was such an abundance, probably Simon and his friends could have made a fair bit of money. Maybe it wouldn't have made them rich, but it would have made them very comfortable. And what does he do? He leaves them there and he follows Jesus. What a crazy man. What a crazy world this is, filled with followers of Jesus. Imagine what it is like for them to go and to have to learn all of these things from Jesus about who he was and about what he expected them to do. Well, it isn't unlike the church today, because when we are the church, particularly in these difficult times, our role isn't so much bringing people into the building as much as it is us going out and being the church outside the building. And so it is that people see us and not the brick structure that they may be so scared to walk into. Imagine if you had never been in a church building before, and you look at it and you can't see in the windows because of the beautiful colored stained glass windows. You have no idea what a baptismal font is, or even the cross on the wall, which one of my vacation Bible school children said, "What's the plus sign doing up there?" Imagine if you didn't know what a communion table was, or a UCW, or the M&S Fund, or all of these other initials that we have. And if you do have enough gumption to walk into the church, you're afraid they're all going to snatch you up right away. The only thing they can catch, and they're going to catch it. But imagine when Jesus calls these men, there must have been something in what they saw in Jesus and what they felt in this new formed relationship that wanted them to go. And my suspicion is what makes the church tired is itself. We try and we try and we try, and we can't attract new people, and we can't do this. And I think there are a couple of reasons why that really happens. Number one is that we think our success is measured by how many people we put in a pew. I mean, let's face it, aren't we all taught in our lives to do the best we can, to provide for our family? Aren't we told to make the best of whatever it is we do for a living, whether we are a stay-at-home mom or a plumber or a teacher or whatever that might be, to do it and to do it well and be successful at it? The world measures everybody by success and failure in numbers. Well, some of the most quote unquote successful or faithful churches that I've ever seen hardly ever made their budget, but somehow they were able to continue in their ministry. The second thing I want to say is that Jesus called them, and it required them to take whatever they got. They didn't say, we're going to throw back the bass. They didn't say, we're only going to keep the perch. What they said was, we're catching fish. So we can't pick and choose who we want to come and tell the stories of Jesus. We can't choose the people that are like us, who have the same interests as us, who dress the same way, who have the same university degrees or number of children or are married or whatever it may be. I can remember moving to Meaford, and some of the older people who had lived on farms used to say that there was a great division between the people who lived in the town of Meaford and the farmers. The farmers were ostracized. They were farmers. Imagine, they're priceless treasures in our society, really. But there was a division, so they weren't really encouraging farmers. They wanted the businessmen who owned the stores. They wanted the women who could bake pies and sew and take care of children and help with the flowers and sing in the choirs. They were picky about what they wanted. Jesus isn't picky. And the reason is that God loves everyone, creates everyone, and says, you're good. I created you like me. You're good from the very beginning of your life. You are good and you are loved. Isn't that wonderful? To know when you took your first breath, you were so incredibly loved by God, and that love continues to be there, and it continues to be generous, it continues to be faithful and promise-filling. The second thing is we have to be patient. One of the things that I think I did a sermon on a long time ago was, I think our world has become easy, quick, and cheap. We want everything the easiest way we can achieve it, which isn't a bad thing always. We want it quick, we want it now, we want fast food. One of the reasons why the Duncan Hines cake mixes became a flop in the early 50s was because all women had to do was add water. And they felt as if they were cheating their families. But when they redid the recipes and they made them add eggs, all of a sudden they became popular because they were baking a cake. They had to invest a portion of themselves. They had to think that that was something really necessary. When we're really quick about things, we don't have to invest ourselves, do we? We don't have to deal with something if we're quick about making it go away. And that's one of the things the church tries to do. Hurry up, let's get this done. Let's get this done. What's next? But Jesus doesn't work that way. If we look at every story of Jesus and every miracle he performed, every interaction that he had, he took his time. And even when he became frustrated with a woman who wanted her child to be healed or wanted her child to be fed, and he pushed her away, she was persistent, and he listened and said that it was her faith. It was her patience, it was her faith that made it come to fruition. And Jesus says that's what's really important. So as the church, I think one of the things that we have missed is the opportunity to be faithful. Jesus didn't ask us to do it all. Jesus didn't ask us to have the most money. And this is something that's very hard for us to understand because newly retired, I have all of my married life and young single life been told, save for your rainy day. Put away money now, it's going to cost a lot when you retire. What if this happens? What if that happens? Save your money. So now I'm at retirement and I think, do I keep saving money? Do I use money? Am I allowed to use money? I have my kids through school, the mortgage is paid off. What do I do? And so what we do is we tend to keep doing the way things we've always done. We've saved, we've held on for the rainy day. The church isn't the same as a family in that regard. And I'll tell you why. We aren't supposed to have RRSPs. We aren't supposed to have big investments. We aren't supposed to have millions of dollars. Churches with lots of money, by the way, don't grow. They're complacent and they're often just comfortable where they are. And you know what? I have yet to really see in 41 years of ministry any church where the treasurer with the doom and gloom would say, in 5 years or in 10 years, this church will be closed. And I'll say, so where are you going to be in 10 years? Jesus said, now is the moment. And what we are given, we are to extravagantly use for others. In other words, use the good fishing lures and use the good bait and tell the good stories of your witness and your faith. Tell people how much God loves you. Show people how much you love them because you love God in the way that you care for them. Do not make the ulterior motive just something to keep a building or a community open. That is never a good mission statement. If the goal of Simon was just to catch fish, he wouldn't have left them on the beach. But he saw in Jesus something more. He saw that there was something bigger than himself. And he saw, like many around him in his community, that this Messiah that was foretold wasn't some big king, wasn't some conqueror who was going to take away all of their enemies, but it was a gentle, sweet Savior who could be righteously indignant, but at the same time taught them that the way to be powerful is through our love. The way to access the Holy Spirit and the gifts of the Spirit to strengthen us for ministry is through love. And I suspect that's one of the reasons why we don't get what we want right away, or we don't get it the way that we think that we should. And I think that's probably a good thing, because each one of our experiences takes us down a journey, and in that journey we learn. Now, that's not to say, and please hear this, that I believe that God causes bad things to happen to us, but life happens. And this building, or any other church building or religious institution like it, is not a greenhouse that protects us from everything. It is a place where people come and are welcomed, where people are served. And it doesn't matter if they wear the best clothes or the worst clothes, but think of those, and I've often in this particular season of the year, think of those who are sleeping on the streets, or couch surfing, or sleeping on the abandoned porches of summer cottages. I think about how cold my hands are when I scrape the windows of my car and wonder what that would be like to have to sleep outside all night, or have no place to go and take a warm shower or wash clothes or even brush your teeth, that you hope you can find some place where nobody will steal what you have. And all of the people that walk by you because they're scared of what ministry there would be. And Jesus says, I want you to fish, but I want you to fish for people. I want you to be compassionate fishers. I want you to be the people who stand out and people say, I know this person because of their love for Christ and their love for God. And so I can remember watching some of the men and women carving turkeys or washing dishes when the dishwasher broke in the kitchen at the church, after they'd spent the whole day cooking and setting up tables and all sorts of things, and they were tired and they wanted to go home. And I would flippantly say, as I washed dishes with them, but Christ loves you. And they would laugh at me and they say, yes, we know. And they'd still be there for the next dinner, and they would be there to help somebody in need, and they would go out of their way. And that's the church. That's what Jesus said, I want you to fish with me, but you're going to take what you get out of that water. You got to have patience to do it. And, the best that you can do is catch and release and hope that they come back. And pray as hard as you have ever prayed, that the Spirit will open your eyes to see what your mission is intended to be. Let us pray. Loving and generous God, it is not always easy to be a follower of you. And even on the best of days, we say to ourselves that indeed we are tired and we are worn, and we wonder if we will ever see the fruits of our labor. But remind us, O God, it isn't the fruits of our labor that we must see. It's simply to love you. That when you call us, we will drop everything to follow you, whether that is to a homeless shelter or a food bank, to someone's house who is in need, to those who are ill in body and spirit, whether it is to a phone to call someone who is alone. Put your ministry before us, most gracious God, and let us be reminded that our success is in our faithfulness to you and our love for you, because you have never stopped loving us. Be with us now, we ask, in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Opportunities there are much, and increasingly it's becoming hard to decide. When the wrong things seem to be right, and confusion is our plight, there is only one rule by which we all should abide.
Choose with your mind on the master make. In your constant advisor, strive to be his in thought, word, and deed. Live every day with the master, and you'll be sure to discover life. Live with God is bound to succeed.
In the Bible we have been warned, wolves in sheep clothing would be found, and we know that the word of God is far from void. When we don't know what course to take, and we're afraid to make a mistake, that's the time we must surely seek direction from God.
Choose with your mind on the master make. In your constant advisor, strive to be his in thought, word, and deed. Live every day with the master, and you'll be sure to discover life. Live with God is bound to succeed.
Old King Solomon, we are told, asked for knowledge instead of gold. As a consequence, he got wisdom and wealth complete. We must first the things of God heed, and all other things that we need will be added to make our lives abundant and sweet.
Choose with your mind on the master make. In your constant advisor, strive to be his in thought, word, and deed. Live every day with the master, and you'll be sure to discover life. Live with God is bound to succeed. Choose with your mind on the master make. In your constant advisor, strive to be his in thought, word, and deed. Live every day with the master, and you'll be sure to discover life. Live with God is bound to succeed. Life, live with God is bound to succeed. Life, live with God is bound to succeed.
Let us think about our call to God and our call to obedience as I read for us today a hard, deep call which takes us from our nets to follow God. You are the God who makes extravagant promises. We relish your great promises of fidelity and presence and solidarity, and we exude in them, only to find out, always too late, that your promise always comes in the midst of a hard, deep call to obedience. You are the God who calls people like us and the long list of mothers and fathers before us who trusted the promise enough to keep the call. So we give you thanks that you are always a calling God, one who always calls us to believe in your promises enough to respond to that call. We pray in the one who embodied your promise and enacted your call, even Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught us to pray together as we hear these lovely words sung of the Lord's Prayer.
Our Father who's in heaven, hallowed be your name. On earth your kingdom come, as in heaven your will be done. Dear Father, let your kingdom come. Holy Father, let your will be done. Jesus, let your will be done, and let your kingdom come. Lord, on this day you've made, give us our daily bread. We, your children, are in need. Oh Lord, lift up our head. Dear Father, let your kingdom come. Holy Father, let your will be done. Jesus, let your will be done, and let your kingdom come. Lord, forgive us our trespasses. We sin in word and deed. Forgive our brothers' sins, for they too are in need. Dear Father, let your kingdom come. Holy Father, let your will be done. Jesus, let your will be done, and let your kingdom come. Lead us not into temptation, for we are often weak. Deliver us from evil, Lord, your strength and grace we seek. Yours is the kingdom, Lord, power and glory too, forever and forever. Amen, amen, it's true. Dear Father, let your kingdom come. Holy Father, let your will be done. Jesus, let your will be done, and let your kingdom come.
Let us pray. God, you call us to give as we have received. You call us to respond in your grace. Let our generosity express our gratitude for your goodness in our lives as we receive our morning offering and listen to this beautiful recording of Give Thanks.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks because He's given Jesus Christ, His Son. And now let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich, because of what the Lord has done for us. Give thanks, give thanks.
Let us pray. God, who calls us to participate in your vision of justice for our world, let these offerings become our response. All your people fed, all your people safe, all your people housed, all your people educated. In Jesus' name, amen. We will now have our closing hymn, We Shall Overcome. Here we are, O Holy One. Send us into your world to do your justice, witness to your vision of grace, and follow you with courage into your transforming reign. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.